Hi, everybody. Thanks for tuning in to the Coaching Call podcast. On this podcast, we'll cover various types of coaching by trainers in sports, martial arts, fitness, and business. We'll discuss each coach's methods to getting the most out of their respective athletes or clients and how they attempt to change the platform in which they coach. Join us on a fun adventure as we discuss unique coaching styles. Coaching is a universal part of how we get others to get something done. Join your host, Raphael, and his guests on this unique journey in coaching.
Hi, I'm Sifu Raphael, and this is the Coaching Call podcast. If you enjoy this episode, please subscribe and leave a review. This episode was made possible by listeners like you. There he is. Kevin just came in. Kevin, how are you, my friend? How's everything? Well, hang on a minute. Let me unmute you, or you can unmute. Okay, now you're unmuted.
Okay, great. Fantastic. No, I went back and closed the door. So less distraction.
There you go.
Yeah. So
happy to have you on. Thank you so much.
Hey, thanks for everything you've done to arrange this. And I appreciate I've enjoyed our interactions, and I've enjoyed listening to some of your prior podcasts and the guests you've had, including Noemi and other people. But I've enjoyed getting acquainted with your format and the interviews you've done with other folks. So I took some notes on some of those too. So
this is about you today.
I know, but I think my training from Noemi, who is wonderful, and then ideas I've picked up from other podcasters, I always find it very beneficial to acquaint myself further, even though you and I have had a pre-interview. I always find it beneficial as a guest to check in with their prior podcaster shows and to get acquainted with their format and the questions and to get I'm much more comfortable now that I've had that opportunity to learn a little bit more about you too. So
I appreciate that. So, the thing about this show that I love the most is I really get to know who you are as a person, how you've come. Think about your life, right? So for me, it's important to find out who's influenced you. And we're going to talk about your book, right?
Okay.
And,
All right.
One of the things we were talking earlier about the experiences that you've had and the people who've affected your life overall. When you consider your life and you look back, it's the people, it's whether they've done good or bad in your life. They're the ones that have shaped you, just like they've shaped me. So I'd love to know where did you grow up, and before the age of 10, who would you say were your biggest influencers?
Okay, that's a very specific question. That's good.
You're welcome.
when I look at 10 years out of 74, that really hones it in for me. No, and in that period of my life, as I explain in the book, and you and I have talked, I was a child of funeral directors, and my uncle being one of them, my dad being the other. They owned the funeral home, and we lived. The book you showed, that's the house I grew up in, and it was an old Victorian house. The people that were most influential in those first 10 years of my life were the family that I lived with, and we lived in conjoined apartments on the second and third floor of this Victorian house. And my mom and dad and my older brother and my younger brother lived on the third floor, which used to be a ballroom. That's a whole story in itself. That was a ballroom that was converted into apartment living. And on the second floor were my aunt and uncle and their three daughters. Their three daughters were anywhere from 14 to 19 years older than me, but they were in and out of the house a lot. And they were all there. When I was born in 1950, they were still in their teens teens. And so they were all welcome. I mean, I wouldn't feel it as a baby, but I know they welcomed me in. And that welcoming environment was very influential those first 10 years. So from 1950 to 1960, it was the idea that there was always people in the house. Not only the people downstairs who were clients of the funeral home. I'm talking more about the the family upstairs and the interactions with us, and the idea that I knew that there was always an adult present, and not overbearing, but just present, and somebody to greet me, or somebody to welcome me into the home each time I came in and out, and to ask how my day was, whether it was my mom or my dad or my aunt or my uncle or my cousins or my brother. I'm sounding like Rosanna Danny here. Um, but the that was what I say, looking at those first 10 years, those were the people that were most influential. And I came from a large extended family. So then you throw in some aunts and uncles and some other cousins. And then as I branched into elementary school, the influence of friends in those first early years of school, and their families. And then there's always, I went to a Catholic school. So in those first 10 years of life, I was certainly influenced by the Adrian Dominican sisters, who were my teachers at my elementary school. So that's the group. I was never, those first 10 years of life, there were many adults, many other peers that were influential and made a difference, and really helped, not helped, they did provide the foundation for where I'm at today. So, yeah.
So I'm wondering if you remember the HBO special, not special, but series, 6 Feet Under.
Oh, yeah.
Right. So you kind of lived that story. Was
Oh,
that
yeah.
story based on you guys, or what's going on?
Funny you bring it up. No, but it certainly, when I started watching that, and it's been 20 years since it first. Oh, I think, yeah. If you get into social media with anthologies and the people that are still posting about that show, actually, it's become sort of a marketing tool for me, because if I see a comment that's made, hey, you might also like to read about a real life family, who, not a fiction family, but a real life family. So, and the interior of that house on 6 Feet Under was very similar to the interior of the house we lived in.
When you were talking about it, I was like,
yeah.
Wait a minute.
And when I watched it and started watching, I thought, wow, where'd this Alan Ball guy get his ideas? And I'd love if some people say sometimes, if there's somebody living you'd like to talk to, I said, well, Alan Ball would be one, because just the stories he put together, and the way, and that influenced, as I mentioned in the book, that influenced the way I constructed some of the book, because one significant part about 6 Feet Under was they started each show with the story, with the story about whoever the client of the week happened to be, and how they met their passing. But then the last episode of the series, which is ranked in one of the top final episodes in TV history, among others, but this one ranks up there. It's because they, just as they had done through the whole 6 years of the series, they went and described how each of the characters passed in the future. And so when I was putting the book together and talked about the 6 of the 7 of the 10 players in my life had already passed on. And so that's how I structured those last few chapters, was as a tribute to each one of them, not only to how they lived, but how they died too, and what went into that, and how I, as the son and nephew of an undertaker, dealt with those deaths. So yeah, 6 Feet Under is a big influence. I can never get enough of watching it. I have to say to people that I don't consider our family quite as
bizarre.
Thank you. I was going to use quirky, but bizarre is even better. We don't have those kind of tales, we don't have those kind of tales. We have some tales, but not. And I guess every family that runs a business, whether it be a funeral home or a plumbing industry, we all have our tales. But and what Alan Ball did with that and the characters was just to portray really clearly, I think, what it's like to be a funeral home family, and some of the things that happen and the decisions you have to make that are part of your personality. Right. So now and then I've even gotten some reviews on Amazon or Goodreads or those places. Hey, this is like this is the best thing I've seen since 6 Feet Under. This really helps me understand a funeral home family, and so I like that. I'm in good company there, so I like that, and like being connected to the show in whatever way I can. And so when you interview Alan Ball sometime, let me know, because
I'll make sure you're on with us.
yeah, okay, all righty, okay, okay.
So considering the fact that here's a question that I would want to know if I was your friend and we went to school together.
Mm-hmm.
How do you sleep with the dead people?
Mm.
So that's one question. I have more.
Okay, all
And
right.
then the other one is, aren't you terrified they're going to come up as ghosts?
Mm-hmm.
Then there's more. There's more.
Okay, all right. I'm layering these questions in my head. Keep going.
I want to frame you, right?
Okay.
And then, what do you do when there's a funeral? Are you allowed to roam around the house, or do you have to stay in your room? Wait, there's more.
Okay.
And if they bring food, do you get to eat it? And
Okay.
what happens if our teacher dies? Will they be at your funeral parlor? Or
Hmm.
when can I come over so you can show me around?
Okay, that's quite a litany of questions there.
Yeah,
You got
so
'em.
answer them in any order you like.
Sure. So I'll just try to, you ask about what it was, how did I sleep at night? I really didn't know any different. I remember,
Well, you
when I-
grew up in it, of
yeah, I
course.
was born in 1950, and the crib or bassinet that they placed me in was on the third floor of the funeral home. And so from the time of birth, I never knew any different. And so as I grew up and got a little older, and sometimes my dad or my mom, if they're working downstairs in the funeral home getting ready for a wake or a funeral, they might have me or my brother. My brother was a year younger than me. They might have us just playing on the floor or doing things as they got ready. Um, so it was an environment for me that was really home to me. It wasn't separate. And and how did I sleep at night? As I got older, or did I think people were going to come upstairs and get me out of bed? No, on the other hand, though, I can remember, and I think I talk about this in the book or mention it. There were times when I became a teen and had a little more independence, but would come home from being out with friends or parked when I was driving. I would let myself into the house, and oftentimes I wouldn't use the back family entrance. I would use the office entrance, which would take me through the funeral home part.
Mm.
And then going up those front stairs, oftentimes there would be a body laid out in a casket. And I could see that casket and the countenance of the person there. And even as a kid who was used to it, I'm now 16, 17, 18, I remember times running up the stairs a couple times because, I got to get out of here.
Yeah.
And not being afraid, but just being, and not even thinking that they're going to follow me up. But there was still that sense from me, even as used to it as I was, that there was something going on in another world. There was some transitions happening that I couldn't identify or claim, but I was part of it. And so I went up the stairs. I think you asked me about friends coming over and stuff. It became my family was very good at normalizing, for lack of a better word, our environment as a family. We had our separate back entrance, and we had our apartments with TVs and radios and all that, kitchens and all that kind of stuff. So friends would come over, they'd come up the back stairs, we'd play on the stairs. I have friends a friend from kindergarten who still remembers how we would jump from color to color on the back stairs, things, and that they got familiar with our house. And usually when we would get up to the second floor, my aunt's kitchen was right there. So if she heard us coming up the stairs, she would greet my friends and me and my brother and just talk to us and, hey, how are you going? And then we would go up to the third floor, and then having sleepovers and having friends come over and stay overnight. But some of those things came up, with the friends. What, are you going to take me around? Are you going to give me a tour? And we knew there were boundaries that we weren't supposed to do. I think I can remember occasion or two when I probably went to places I should have not have with my friends, but but they just got used to it, and we had a backyard with a basketball hoop, and we rode our bicycles, and we did paper routes and things like that. So that was a very normal type thing, and I don't remember ever a time when a friend or a family, friends of my parents said, "We're not going to go there. That's in a funeral home. We're not going to go to those apartments." It was just the atmosphere that I think from the time my uncle started the business in 1930 with his wife, his bride in 1930, I think that was just something they carried through, and it came through to their daughters, my cousins, and my brothers and I, and it was just never an issue that I recall, and that just who we were. You ask about, I think about a teacher who died or teachers. I don't recall a teacher who died who was ever waked at our house or had a funeral, but teachers did come over, especially I remember I have a picture in my mind of some of the nuns who taught me who would come over to go to a wake of a parishioner or the parent of a friend or something. So they would come over, and I remember a couple occasions when my family would invite them upstairs because they were our teachers, and offer them a cup of coffee or something like that. And so I remember one of the nuns who came up. She's still alive. She's almost 100 years old, and I had a chance to reconnect with her recently. But I remember her as a 20-something nun coming upstairs and feeling her presence, and thought, "Wow, what are you doing out of the classroom? What are you doing in my house?" You know? So it was those kind of experiences that sort of that not sort of they did. They evolved over the years, and people coming in and out of the house. I say in the book that I say to my friends, "How many of you have had over 12,000 people come to your house in any given calendar year?" But as I broke down the funeral home history and did a little number crunching and estimating, I figured that when my dad and uncle were running the business, and the amount of people that would come to a particular funeral or wake, and the number of funerals that they had in a year, it amounted to about 12,000 people that would come into that first floor of the funeral home. So they were really coming into my house. And one of the jobs I had as early teen, adolescent, was to hold the door open and greet people and say, "Hello, welcome to O'Connor Funeral Home. My name's Kevin. How can I help you?" And if we had 2 or 3 wakes going on at the same time, then I would give them the chapel that they could go to. If they needed assistance on the steps, I would do that. And then when they left, I would say, "Thank you for coming. I appreciate appreciate it. Thank you very much." Did the whole public relations thing that my uncle and dad put us. That was just part of who we were, and part of who we were as a family. So I think that I hit upon everything I think you asked about. All right. Thank you. So that was how life was lived with me as a kid in a funeral home, and up through my 20s when I was part of that residence, really part of it. So
quite interesting, and I love the fact that your family kept it just, we're family. This is our home. There's nothing special. There's just a business running next to it, right?
Yeah.
When you consider a family, and you said how many people have come to your home, but not all of them were alive, right? So
No, there's always at least one that was
at least
deceased.
one of them.
Yes. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
But when you consider the business end of it, it's huge business.
Mm-hmm.
You never have downside.
Mm-mm. Mm-mm. No.
And when you also consider the fact that a lot of people want to get into the family business, what's your excuse?
Excuse, that's a good thing. Well, thanks for that question. And certainly it's part of my journey. One thing about my dad and my Uncle Lawrence, and my dad, Bill, none of us, there were 6 cousins, my 3 older cousins and my brother who's 10 years older than me and my younger brother. A couple things happened. A few things happened. In the when my older cousins came of age in the early 50s, they're all women. In the funeral industry at the time, it was I don't think it was even a consideration that a woman would be involved in the industry, what they call the death care industry now. Now that's changed. There's more women than men in the industry. But at that time, for my 3 cousins, it was, I don't know if they were ever even approached by my uncle and my aunt to say, hey, would you like to help out? I think they found their own path into their own college and training things and marriages and found their way. My older brother in 1940, he was born in 1940, so he got out of college in 1962. And he quickly became a father and had an accounting degree and went into that field. I and my younger brother, who came of age, college age in the 70s, we just decided to take other routes. But I think aside from the history of demographics and my female cousins and us, my dad and my uncle, even though they had invested themselves in this business, had our name on the front, still does, almost 100 years later, the funeral home is still in existence, owned by somebody else. But they had their name on the front, but they never really said, you have to do this, or we're counting on you to do this, or, hey, you were birthed into this family, now it's your responsibility to carry on. So certainly there was no sense of demanded continuity like it would be for Prince William in England. So, I mean, Harry's figuring out his own way. But aside from all that, we always they were always given other opportunities. So I mentioned my brother who became a banker. I decided to pursue education and teaching, and my younger brother had his own business with remodeling and construction and creating that kind of creative. He got that from my dad. So that's part of that story is on my website. It's a section called Jack Rants, R-A-N-T-S, and a friend from Elgin who has a LinkedIn program called Jack Rants, Jack Hubbard. Yes. He interviewed my brothers and I and had some of these same questions. Why didn't you guys take on? And that for me, it was the freedom we had. And I think it was a credit to my uncle and my dad to, I guess, unknowingly or knowingly let go. I think too, intuitively, I would pick up from my dad that something you mentioned earlier, in the 30s, 40s, 50s, 60s, it was a business that really tied one down. It was the owner, the manager had to be on the premises. It's different now with communications and phones. And my dad was thrilled when he got a beeper in the 60s because he could leave the house and he knew we could get a hold of him if we needed. But I think that was expressed to me in not directly, but just knowing and observing that, hey, if I was to do this, I really have to devote myself to this, and this is it. This is being here. And when I got introduced to education classes, and I was a political science major, but I took a fair number of education classes. So when I got introduced to that and just started thinking, hey, this is what I want to do. That's the decision I made. And my younger brother, again, I explained in this on the website in that Jack Rants. My younger brother, my dad had, as I explained in the book, my dad had exquisite talents in carpentry and design and furniture making. And my younger brother took that on and made that into his career. And so I think each of us, my brother, the banker, me, the educator, and the other brother, the creator, we all did things that were related to service and servitude, just like my dad and uncle did. And so we had wonderful models of how to be involved in community, how to treat people, how to always put your best foot forward and make things more than nice. So I think that was something that we had been, and watching that, and then knowing that they were supportive of my launching myself into whatever I wanted to do, gave me the wings and the courage to just go for it and not be saying, gee, I really should be a funeral director. I never had that should in my head. I never had it. I just kept launching. That's what I did.
Yeah. Incredible. I'm wondering, because you all went into servitude, if all the lessons that you were noticing when, especially you were the greeter, you were the person saluting people, because they're having a hard time, and you saw empathy, and maybe you had some, and you felt for them, but you didn't really understand what they were going through because everybody goes through it differently.
Mm-hmm.
But with the servitude, if it enabled you to be a better teacher, a better principal, a better friend, even to people past. If you think about it, right? All the families that came to your home, they were passing by.
Mm-hmm.
So if you think when you were a teacher, your students were passing by.
Mm-hmm.
They were on a journey, and you were their guide temporarily.
Mm-hmm.
So somebody else guided them, right? So if you think of servitude in that way, you probably were an amazing instructor, a teacher, a principal. And even I've known a lot of teachers who never took it to that level of principal. I have a couple of clients now who are teachers, and I have some who are principals, and I have some who are, at different levels of education.
Mm-hmm.
I have clients who are professors. I have clients in all realms of education and communication. So when you consider your path and you said servitude, I can see how your dad and your Uncle Lawrence, what's your dad's name, by the way?
Bill.
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 Okay.
Mm-hmm.
And how and even your mom, right?
Oh yeah.
And
And
how the lessons that you and your family received, and you saw the way they treated people. And I think that probably is still with you because you can see that, and how you can see someone in need and say, I can help you,
mm-hmm.
right?
Oh, definitely, definitely. You're giving me lots of food for thought here.
There you go.
The I think, and then you mentioned my mom, and in turn my Aunt Mildred, who was very much, she helped my Uncle Lawrence create this business in 1930 and start it along with my grandparents who helped them. Um, so I think part of what and growing up in that family atmosphere, where it was team, it was, we all had our role. I mean, I could certainly Dad and Uncle Lawrence, could all do the background work and and not only the background. I mean, when I say background, I mean the preparation, getting the body ready, and all that kind of setting up creating the setting.
Right.
My mom and my Aunt Mildred being involved in different community organizations, and not so much going out there in their groups to hand out matchbooks with O'Connor Funeral Home on it. They didn't do that, or pens or anything like that, but just knowing that they were there and doing work in whatever work they were doing, whether it be a parent group at our schools or at church organizations, or my mom was used to get involved in productions and be the director of productions and did volunteer work and whatever they were doing, and us kids as well. There's a chapter in the book that I call Ambassadors. We were all ambassadors, and it was not drilled into us, but it was emphasized just by modeling from them that when we went out in the community, whether I'm on my bike doing my paper route, or helping Dad and walking down to City Hall to have something signed, or being on my bike, or when I later got a driver's license and would help with taking flowers to the family's house, or those kind of things. We were always ambassadors. And so people knew us as O'Connors. And Yeah, it was sort of, not sort of, it was made clear to us that, hey, you're probably going to stumble and fall and make a mistake here or two. You are teenagers, but but know that every time that happens, some people might think, oh, that's the O'Connor kid. Maybe I'll reconsider and go to the funeral home down the street.
Mm,
And just how important our name was. Transferring that into my career, though, I think it was very similar. When I talked about opening a door at the funeral home. When I was a teacher, I took it upon myself to greet my kids at the door most
mm,
mornings and each hi, how are you? Try to mention their name as they walk through the door. Um, or when I was a principal, one of my jobs was my self-imposed jobs was to stand out in the front of the sidewalk as people were dropping off their kids or kids were getting off the bus, and just be a presence. Not that I get a chance to say hi to everybody, no, but just the idea that I was there. I knew that I was representing the school. I was
mhm.
representing, even though I was representing the teachers that were in the building because they were waiting for the kids to come in. I was representing our community in that way. And that I got that from my upbringing and how
Wow.
important that was, and how I was able to transfer that into the job I had.
Mm,
And as I got involved in later years, even when I finished principaling and moved to Fort Lauderdale and got involved with LGBT support work down here in Broward schools, the idea of being present and making presentations and going to schools and helping staff and kids and advocating for them.
mm.
It was just
That's incredible.
yeah,
That's
and even
incredible that you're
one
doing that.
simple thing, even as a principal. I mean, when I was a kid in the funeral home, one of my jobs was to make sure the chairs were stacked and put away, made sure they were set up correctly for a
Mm.
funeral or a wake. My dad would say, "Hey, we need a lot of chairs for this one. Put them in 2 rows," and he would give me these directions, and we'd set up the folding chairs, and I did that. And then at the end, you take them down, you stack them, and put them in the closet, and then you get ready for the next funeral. I think I titled one of the chapters "Ready for the Next Funeral." But
Mm.
anyway, but here I was a principal for 21 years at 2 different schools. Oftentimes, I was the one setting up, helping the custodial or the parents or teachers set up chairs, take down chairs. I would, as kids got older in the school, 5th, 6th, 7th grade, I'd say, okay, I would recruit some to help them. So here I was passing on this chair skill that I had learned from my parents and my family business to the kids at school. But each time I folded one of those metal chairs after a school assembly or unfolded it to get ready, I would think to myself, Kevin, you had tremendous training. You know how to do this based on some of the and servitude,
Mhm.
and you wanted to make people comfortable. What's the best way to set up this assembly? What's the best way to put a walking row down the middle, so people can get to their seats comfortably, and things like that. So, but that was all part of what my dad and Uncle Lawrence taught me in terms of preparing for guests, preparing for visitors, making an atmosphere comfortable, whether it's a funeral home parlor or a school gym. So I think that was one thing that I transferred. I think that
Yeah.
answers your question.
No,
So,
no, without a doubt. I mean, wow.
okay. Uh-huh.
But when you consider, like, for example, um, my fiance's nephew, his best friend is actually his family owns a funeral. They own several,
Mm-hmm.
and that's what he went to school for, to become a
Mm-hmm.
funeral director
Mm-hmm.
and embalming and all that stuff.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I had a client of mine who did martial arts with me, and he was in the process of buying a funeral. He had worked for one. He was buying it, and I think to get the license was $1 million at the time or something.
Wow. Mm-hmm.
So they're not necessarily cheap because you
No.
do make so much.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but one of the things that he would tell me is he would call me. He goes, "Hey, I can't see you today." I'm like, "Oh, okay, everything okay?" He goes, "Yeah, I just had to go. I had to drive." and go get a body in the middle of
Yeah.
the night. I'm
Yes.
like,
Yes.
oh, I
Yes.
get it now. I said, so anytime I said, you don't have to call me, just text me, say, won't be there, and I'll understand.
Yeah.
Because it was often, and a lot of times, he was the one that he was the funeral director, and because he had just purchased it, he would have to go and do all these pickups.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and it
Mm-hmm.
would be at all kinds of hours.
Oh yeah. I think, part of what in my own making my own decision about, you asked earlier about what went into my decision about not pursuing the business. Well, it's partly in growing up, just
Mm,
knowing that my dad could be called away at any given time. He might have had all good intentions to come to a basketball game that my
right.
brothers or I were playing in, or come to a play, or go to an event. But then I'd look out in the audience and this mom was there.
Yeah.
And then I knew that was just what was happening. And there were times even in the midst, well, sometimes in the midst of our family dinners, well, just for us at dinner, the phone would ring and Dad would get up and answer the phone, and then his plate would be left there. He
Mm,
needed to go. Or since we lived right upstairs from the funeral home, but I remember times when he would get a call during opening Christmas presents or during Christmas dinner, and he'd say, okay, he'd be on the phone, I'll be right there. And then he'd just say to us, hey, can we pause here until I get back home? So oftentimes we didn't go on without him. We just waited
mm.
and went on with other things and waited till he rejoined us. So certainly that, in thinking about your friend, that's certainly a factor.
Oh,
And I think maybe today, I've been getting more active in the death care industry, even though I didn't practice it as a profession. I've been getting involved with it and talking to more and more people. And I think one of the differences is that um, they're not as tied down as they used to be, as
mm,
Dad and Uncle Lawrence were,
right.
because of what's happened with the convenience of education, of communication, and how that's happened. So that's really been that's been good. That's been good. So
It's incredible. I'd like to play a video, and it's about communication. I have a master class coming up. Take a look.
Welcome to Speaking Prowess, where we believe in the power of communication to transform lives. If you're ready to take your communication skills to the next level, then mark your calendars for April 5th, because we've got something special for you. We have a lineup of some of the most influential communication experts in the industry. These are the voices that will guide you on a journey to enhance your ability to connect, influence, and succeed. At Speaking Prowess, our mission is clear: to empower you through effective communication. We know that mastering the art of communication isn't just about what you say. It's about how you say it and the impact it has on every aspect of your life. So take action now. Join us on April 5th and unlock your full speaking potential. Reserve your spot today and get ready to embark on a journey towards personal and professional growth. See you at the masterclass on April 5th.
So that's happening.
great. I'll sign up. I recognize Rob Wentz's name. He'd be a perfect one for that
Yeah,
panel.
yeah.
That'd be wonderful. I love
I'd love for you to come and join us on that
April
day.
5th. Yeah, I'm writing it down
April 5th,
right now.
there's the link. I'm also going to throw that link up for anybody who is interested in joining us.
Thank you.
Here's the thing that we consider about communication, right? As a teacher, what did you teach? What subject were you teaching?
I was an elementary teacher, so I taught
You taught everything.
I taught well, in terms of the classrooms I had, it was anywhere from kindergarten to fifth grade.
Mm,
So elementary, that's what I taught, and combinations of different grades and different locations, but elementary kids is what I taught. Yeah.
So, one of the questions that I've always said, and it's like in every profession, some people get into a profession because they see a way to make a living, a way to make money, but they don't have a passion for it. And I've noticed it in nursing. And I know because my ex-wife was in the hospital for about almost 3 months because She had trouble with carrying the baby, so she had to be bedridden in the hospital. And then you had nurses that were sweethearts. They were very caring, and then other ones that were rough and mean and nasty. And so I'm like, wow, there's a difference between people. And some are here because they want to help, and others it's because it's a job. And I've seen the same thing with teachers. I mean, I've had some amazing teachers when I was in school, and then I had some that, like, I can't even recall what they even looked like because I wanted to fall asleep. They were that boring, and they really didn't have an impact. But when somebody goes into it and they're passionate about it, and you realize that you were there to help, the fact that you greeted the kids, that's huge. That's something that every teacher should be listening to right now, to make the kids feel like they're there for a reason. They belong. There was a video, and I forget where I might have been on LinkedIn, where there was a teacher that came in and she greeted. It might have been in China somewhere, or Korea or something. And it was a teacher that she greeted every kid the way the kid wanted to be greeted. Some kids just wanted a hug, others wanted a bow.
Yeah, that's beautiful.
I'm sorry, some wanted a wave, other wanted a bow, other ones wanted a hug, and other ones did a little dance. And it was so interesting to watch because that teacher allowed each kid to express themselves correctly, right? And then I do have another question for you. I'm so inquisitive. What are your thoughts on allowing, not when they're in fifth grade or something like that, but when they get maybe into eighth, ninth, 10th grade, to allow kids to choose the type of learning they're going to be doing compared to being forced? They're never going to use calculus. Should they be wasting their time in a calculus class when all they want to do is become an artist? So what are your thoughts on that?
Well, great question. I think in my own experience, even with elementary, I'll get into the ages you talked about too. But in my own experience in teaching and being a principal of elementary schools, and for a few years I was the principal of a middle school as well. But I think at all ages, I think we have to tune in to the child and tune into where they're at in their learning modalities and their learning roots. You talked about the way that video you saw, the teacher gave initiated her greeting to each student in a way that the child had told them in some way that they wanted to be greeted. If the child was uncomfortable with hugs, she wasn't going to give a hug.
Right.
If they were better with a high five, they did a high five. So, I mean, those kind of, whatever worked. And then when I was teaching active in a classroom, just the idea that I wanted to get to know learn to know as much as I could about each child, not only them, but their family and their background, and did a lot with home visits and visiting the families at home to try to get myself beyond the classroom and help that atmosphere in my class be very welcoming, and then keep listening. I think sometimes in the teaching profession, I think it's getting better. I think in the teaching profession, there is so much emphasis placed on our voice that sometimes we forget or neglect the listening part. And that old saying, we have two ears and one mouth. I think that's really important in teaching. So jumping a little bit to what your question was about, as kids get older, I think I think it was my experience with my own kids when they were in middle school in what years was that? The 90s. there's usually each year they had a section where they could have a little more choice in what they were going to take. So it was a combination of, the standard curriculum that was mandated, but they had some choice and a little bit in middle school, more in high school, the electives and what they wanted to take. And so there was that, and I think the important part about that, when you're given kids those kind of opportunities, it has to come with guidance. It has
Mm.
to come with support. Sometimes I've watched schools, make those efforts, but they don't make themselves available to help the kids make the decisions.
Mhm.
Some kids don't know they need the help in making the decisions. But I mean, the idea that with guidance and with adults, whether it be a trusted teacher or a counselor in the school, who helps the child discover their strengths, to set some goals. We haven't even talked about goal setting a little bit now, but that idea at a young age, even when I was teaching second grade, I would try to do with kids, hey, what's your goal for the week? What do you want to have? How many more words do you want to have learned by Friday? And set those down. Something that was quantifiable and something that then we could say at the end, hey, you did it. As the kids get older, that whole concept of goal setting, I think, is so, so, so important. And how to
Mhm.
set a goal, how to carry it through, what to do if you don't make the goal, and to learn, and all the lessons that there are in the failure of that. Or I don't even want to call it failure. Let's call them setbacks.
Yes.
It's not a fail. It's
Mhm.
that old adage about the famous baseball player Babe Ruth. How we talk about the home runs he hit, but there's also a much, much, much higher number of all the times he struck out and all the times he was at bat. So
Mm.
I think that's the other thing with kids at any age, and especially as they get to middle school, high school, to help them set goals, to help them navigate the journeys, to help them say, hey, how do I learn from this? What's the lesson I learned here? What can I do the next time?
Mm.
And then how do I include my friends and my peers in this? So I think that's my take on it as a not I was start to say looking back on my own educational career and my own parenting, but still I think I'd like to see that happening in school settings now too. Yeah.
Yeah, definitely. It's interesting in high school. Actually, in middle school, I was put into honors. I don't even know why I was put in honors. I guess I had good grades, right? And then when I got to high school, they said, "Hey, you're in honors, but we have a super honors. We want to put you in there." I'm like, "What? What?" And then so they put me in this class, and it was no longer high school; it was college, right?
Hmm. Hmm.
And the gentleman heading it was spearing a high level learning, and because of what he was doing, his goal was to start a new school, and he actually did it in New York. It's called a new school,
Okay.
and it's for higher and really gifted kids. You have to have a certain average and so forth to even get into that high school. And he spearheaded it, and we were the test group.
Okay.
It
Okay.
was pretty interesting, and we learned so much stuff. I mean, the gentleman was just super, super incredibly brilliant. So when you consider your life, what would you say is a defining factor if you were to look back right now in your entire life?
Hmm. One defining factor.
Start with one.
Okay, so one. One defining factor. Okay. The one that comes to my mind right off the top of my head here. One defining factor was my decision in my junior year of college. I went to Loyola University in Chicago. But in my junior year, and I made the decision before my junior year started, I made the decision to go to the Loyola University Rome Center campus. And that still exists. It's been more than 60 years now that it's been there. And it's an opportunity for students at some point in their college career to go to have a foreign educational experience.
Mm,
Now, going there, It was English, all the classes were in English except the two Italian classes I took. This was in 1970, 71.
Mm.
But at the time, going there, I had a core group of people that I knew who were going that from my home university. But when we got there was also 350 other students from all over the United States and the world that were there.
Wow.
Either most of us were living on campus, some were residents who lived in Rome. I think when you talk about something, a key moment, I mean, going there provided up, well, going there is, I met people who then directed me into saying I want to go to further education in California to become a teacher. I met people there that were from that area and moved there because of that. So that changed my life. The other beauty about this group of people is we're now 53 years later, there is still a core of probably 150 of us who in some way or another still communicate.
Wow.
And
That's
those,
pretty cool.
yeah, and those folks from the Loyola University Rome Center have been key players in my life. In fact, I wouldn't have, my husband, Leon, I wouldn't have met him unless I had met people at Rome Center in 1970 who eventually led me to him.
Mm.
So it's that particular year. And the other thing that's very instrumental in the book is based on 700 pages of handwritten letters that went back and forth between my parents, my aunt and uncle, and I.
Wow.
And most of those letters were written during my college years, even in only being 50 miles away from home, living in Chicago the first 2 years. People still wrote letters. It was too expensive to make a long distance phone call. Even then, we still wrote letters. But when I got to Rome, those letters went back and forth, and I saved them. My parents saved them. My aunt and uncle saved them. So I ended up with the collection, and those letters provided the inspiration to me to write the book.
Mm.
So, and that idea of your tape, about communication. And that whole idea of communication before internet was so different. That year really made a difference in my life in terms of how to communicate with people, how to write. I also carried a tape recorder around with me for most of my trips and would record my voice and send that recording to my family to say, hey, I'm here at Oktoberfest. Here, I'm going to toast a beer to you or something. And so just to share my experiences with them, either in a letter or in tapes. I'm having those tapes transcribed right now.
Wow.
So I can use them in a next book that's coming up.
Nice.
So going back to your question, so that would be one key event among others, listing my marriages and the birth of my children and deaths in my family and friends, but certainly a key factor in my own growth and my own advancement, sometimes advancement forward, sometimes looping back and spiraling. A lot of that has to do with leaving home that 1 year, being out of the country for a year with little to no connection, and just developing my own family of friends that has stayed very permanent. So,
oh, my gosh, I can only imagine you waiting for the letters, right? Writing the letters and just being excited to put it in the mail.
Mm-hmm.
That's a lost art. That right now, my friend, is a lost art.
Oh, definitely.
I don't think any teenagers right now know how to write a letter.
No.
They wouldn't even know how to address it.
Yeah, and I'm wondering, I mean, it was drummed into us as
kids in college, they don't know how to address a
I
letter.
don't know. I'm not sure. I remember my elementary and high school education, we were taught, where to put the address, where to put that. And in that book you have in your hand, the background of the book is a collage of some of the letters that went back and forth, and on the cover. And the book editor made those letters look like clouds. and she
I
used
like
that.
that drawing of the house. Right?
Oh, that's it. Yeah, that's a story. That was done by a high school student in 1955 that just came out and sat in our front yard.
Wow.
And then she gave
Janet
that to me.
Sodowski,
Yeah, Janet Jan
Sakoti,
Sakoti.
Sakoti.
And I've been able to contact that family. She was graduated from high school in 55, and she gave that to our family, and it hung in the funeral home. Now I look out over to my left side. It's hanging in my office right now.
Oh wow, that is so
And,
cool.
and one of my sons says, "Dad, have you got my name on the back of that? I want that." Yeah, so it's already committed for the next generation. So
Wow.
yeah, so the whole, and I've done some seminars and hope to continue. Not hope, I plan to continue with more, just to let people know, what do you do when you find these letters? What worked for me to organize them? How did I make sense out of them? How did I find the characters that were revealed? And really, even though I knew these people well, my aunt, my uncle, my mom, my dad, my cousins, um, when I read their writings, and it's their actual words, and when I started to use use letters in the book and had to transpose or type their words into my computer, I often felt, gosh,
Nostalgic,
that's
right?
them talking to me.
Right.
That's them. Those are their words. They're not mine.
Mm.
And it comes out pretty clear in some of the letters that my mom and I wrote back and forth during the height of the Vietnam War protests in the 1970. And we were on different pages at the time.
Mm.
But some of the things that were communicated in our letters, one of the editors said to me, "Wow, there's such passion in these letters." And to type my mom's words into that, as angry as she was with me, but yet at the same time she wanted to understand.
Yeah.
And that came from her. It wasn't something I was making up as I wrote this memoir. It was their words. So there's such a power in letters, and
You're giving me so many amazing ideas that we need to bring this back.
well, what I
We have to
discovered.
create a course and come on
Oh
speaking
yeah,
prowess.
thanks. Let's do it. Let's do it. Yeah, I would love to, because I've done it. I had an opportunity to give a presentation on a cruise line last May, and the theme was, letter writing, and what do you do with letters, and how do you save them? And some people came to that presentation, "Oh, I threw all those away." I
Right.
said, well, the next time you find them, or if you know somebody who does, here's what worked for me. And I love sharing that information, because you can Google around and find other people who have ideas. That's fine. There's some resources out there. But I think the idea that when we look through archives, when we look through, trace things back, there's such richness in those words that we don't get in email. How many of us save? I mean, the email is in there in the computer someplace, but how many of us print it up and put it in a folder or save it?
Nobody.
And
Or text messages, right?
I'd love to unpack some of the relationships I've resolved in the last 20 years just through email communication. I'd love to see those in print so I could relate to them again, and I could probably find them. But it's not like having something real in your hand. And I love that. I love that part of putting the book together, and they're all those letters are all in folders sitting behind me on a shelf, many shelves. But it's a treasure. It's a treasure to have those.
It is a treasure. It's very interesting when somebody says to me, "Hey, like if they're in North and they go, I want to send you my Kindle." I'm like, "Yeah, don't." They're like, "What do you mean, don't?" I'm like, "If it's not something I can hold, I'm not going to sit in front of my computer. I work on my computer. I don't want to sit in my computer and read, right? I want to read. I want a physical." So having something to hold is huge for me. I'm old school that way.
No.
If like journals, I mean, think of the stories that we have come through because people have written books. What we can learn from somebody, and the importance of even writing a journal, because I wish my great 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 grandfather lived to be 113. I wish I would have known what his life was like. his
Yeah,
daily things, his thoughts. What food did he eat?
I
All
wondered
these
too.
different things. That would have been amazing. That's something I would
Yes.
cherish. So for me, I journal all the time, and this way I can leave it. And even if nobody ever reads it, but maybe 300 years from now, somebody goes, "What the heck is this? Oh, look, it's
Yeah,
rough."
and that's it. You mentioned in my bio before the show, just that I do a lot of stuff with genealogy through Ancestry or 23andMe or those things. And it's one thing to see a name and the birth and the death dates on there, and even some of their artifacts that people post. But for the most part, all we know is their name and their date and their dates. And I happen to run across, even in the front of the book, I have a family tree, which
Mhm.
traces back. You probably noticed it traces back to my grandparents, and even as recently as yesterday, I was looking at some of the dates. These, I put this in the book myself, but looking at the dates again and thinking, well, why did that happen? I didn't know that person died when my grandmother, her mother. I didn't know my great great grandmother died only when my grandmother was only 5 years old.
Mm.
Wow, what's the story there, and
Yeah.
what happened, and if people had written things down, where are those writings? And I just know you talked about journals in some of my own counseling experiences when I'm being counseled or when I'm working
Mm.
with a counselor. One in particular, couple in particular, have had me write journals in between our sessions, and then we share the segments of the journals. I've kept a lot of those
Oh,
journals,
nice.
and just and someday maybe somebody will read them.
Mm.
But it's certainly periods of my life that were anxiety ridden, and going through divorce, or when I was coming out, or
Mhm.
things like that, and the counselors who knew how much I could reveal to myself by putting it in writing. I mean, this is in this century, in the 2000, in the 2000, well, the late 1990s and the 2000s. But just knowing the power of writing, and knowing what writing this book did for me, it was my own. And the other thing I wanted to do when I wrote this book was to give life to the lives of the people that my
Mm.
offspring are from. This group of people that grew up in this house, there's probably about 100, I think about 150 some offspring.
Wow.
So my intention in writing the book was not only to let them know about their grandparents, their great great grandparents, their ancestors through the letters they had written, but
Mm.
also to share those experiences with other readers too. And just knowing that there's power in story, there's power in authenticity of words. And
Mm.
I wanted the book, and I succeeded to make the book authentic. I didn't make up stuff, or I didn't say, I think this might have happened. I only put stuff in there that I knew had happened. And
Mm.
so that's that was part of the framework I used.
Nice. Kevin, I got to tell you, man, I had such a blast having you on the show today.
Well, thank you.
And we could probably talk for many more
Oh
hours.
yeah, yeah. And I
And,
look, maybe if
and
they
I would,
squeeze me into a different next show.
we're going to squeeze you into many more shows. And
Okay,
then definitely, I would love for you to come and join us on April 5th
I've got it
in the
written down.
masterclass. Come be part of the audience. And then we can also talk about how you can come and be an instructor at the Speaking Prowess,
Sure, let's
center
do
and
that.
so forth.
That's got a lot of opportunity there. Yeah, yeah.
Absolutely. And do me a favor. How can somebody find you? What was your email
Sure.
or
Yeah, they
your
can.
website?
Sure, I'll give you.
How
I
can
can
we
give you
find
all that.
you?
You can add it to the show notes. I think you have some of it, but maybe
What's
go to
your
my
website?
my website is Kevin O'Connor author. I see on the screen it's got the apostrophe in there. You don't have to use the
You
apostrophe.
want to just throw that in the
Oh,
private chat and I'll
sure.
put it
Let's
across and
do. Thank
put
you.
it
Let me
in
do
there.
that. Hey, great. Let me get over to that spot. There it is. www. Kevin O'Connor author.
I'm just excited that we and I know we missed an opportunity because I had things going on, but thank you so much for coming today and sharing.
I'll put my email in
You
here too. Okay,
know,
7351.
So I got you here,
Gmail.
KevinO'ConnorAuthor.com. Right.
I'll even put my text number in here if anybody wants to reach out.
I'm gonna put this in the banner.
And then when they go to and I'm on Facebook and LinkedIn and Instagram. Um, And they can go, it's all on my website. All those links are there.
Yeah,
They can go.
let's just just put your website up, and then
There we
that'll
go.
be
Yeah,
good for everybody.
that's tremendous.
I'm
That's
also going to
wonderful.
put it in the comments, so
Okay.
somebody is connect. I'm going to put connect with Kevin.
Yeah, they can go there and they can sign up there to get my newsletter. I put a newsletter out every week, just about the journey the book and I've been taking in the last 15 months, and just people I meet and things that are happening with and just what I've learned about marketing and book publishing, and that's a whole nother thing. I'm getting into podcast about self-publishing and what happens in that world and how that's layered on top of growing up in a funeral home, having an educational career, and now having this retirement career of writer, author, marketer. So it's been lots of trips around the sun.
I love it. I love it. Well, I got to thank you again for today.
Thank you. Thank you.
Make sure you have an exceptional day. And what can I say? I'm thrilled that we are connected, my friend.
Well, thank you. And I'll do a sensei bow and stuff too. So, but and as you know, we've got other connections with New York and Farmingdale, and there's some karma in there with us. So, so thanks a lot.
When you're out here, you got to come join us.
We're having
some, I don't know, listen, you may want to visit your family I have an event April 19th and 20th here in New York. We're having it at the Speaking Prowess Center here in New York. It's our launch party. If you come visit your family in Babylon, we're right down the block.
Yes, you are.
It would be phenomenal to have you here with us.
Okay, I'll look all that up. Well, I will be getting to New York this calendar year, but I'm not sure when, but I'll let you know.
Look at that. Perfect timing.
Okay. Okay.
All right, my friend.
All right.
Thank you so much.
Thanks a lot, Sifu. Thanks. I really appreciate it. Thank you.
Thanks.